Dust rolled thick across Ironwood's main street that morning, as if the earth itself wanted to cover what was about to happen. But nothing could hide Clara Whitmore. She was dragged through the dust, her wrists bound raw, her heavy blue dress torn at the seams, clinging with dirt and sweat. Her knees scraped the gravel, her breath came ragged. And from the sidelines, men, women, children, all of Ironwood watched. Some with mocking smiles, some with quiet pity, but most with a cruel hunger of those who've been waiting for a spectacle. The narrator's voice cuts sharp, almost like a whip. They dragged her for what she could not give. Clara's face bore the truth of years, not just her weight, which the town loved to sneer at, but the scars of labor, of rejection, of always being less in their eyes. The townsfolk had many names for her: Barren Cow, Jonah's Curse, the useless wife. Her husband, Jonah Whitmore, had died 2 winters ago. How? No one agreed. Some whispered pneumonia, others claimed he drank himself into the grave. But the cruelest voices said it wasn't illness, nor whiskey. They said it was her, that she was too much, that she drained the life out of him, that God had punished him for marrying a woman who could not give him children. It wasn't just gossip anymore. It had become creed. Reverend Cole stood tall at the edge of the street, his black coat fluttering in the hot wind, eyes hard, lips pressed into something that looked like righteousness but stank of pride. He didn't need to shout. His silence gave the crowd its permission. Unwomanly, someone muttered. Useless, another spat. A boy threw a stone that struck her shoulder. She winced but did not cry out. Clara Whitmore had been shamed before, but never like this. Her locket swung loose, against her throat as she stumbled, a locket with a faded sketch of Jonah inside. She wore it not for love anymore, but as armor, to show she had once been wanted, that she had once been a wife. The sound of boots on the boardwalks thudded steady. A murmur moved through the crowd. Eyes shifted away from Clara to the tall figure stepping into the dust. Elias Carter, a cowboy, broad-shouldered, coat worn, hat shadowing a face that carried more silence than most men could bear. His hands, calloused from ranch and war alike, hung easy near the rifle slung at his side. He was not smiling. He rarely did. But 2 smaller figures darted ahead of him, bright against the dust. Anna and Elsie, his twin daughters, just 3, maybe 4. Dressed alike in simple cotton frocks, their hair in loose braids, their cheeks flushed with the wild courage only children can carry. The girls had been playing by the mercantile when they saw Clara dragged, and unlike the rest of Ironwood, they did not look with scorn. They looked with something pure, something dangerous, compassion. The men pulling Clara jerked her forward again, her knees sinking into the gravel. Her breath rattled. Her face lifted once, just once, and in her eyes burned not just shame but fury. Not at them. At herself, perhaps. At God. At the cruel fate that let her body be the measure of her worth. And that was when it happened. Anna, clutching her ragged little doll, broke from the boardwalk. Elsie ran after her, and together they planted themselves in front of Clara, tiny boots kicking up the dust. Their hands gripped tight, 2 sets of bright blue eyes staring up at the woman on her knees. And Anna spoke first, her voice trembling but clear enough for every ear in Ironwood. "We'll ask Daddy to marry you." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Then Elsie added, with the stubbornness only a twin could give, "You can be our mommy." The silence that followed was unlike anything Ironwood had ever known. Even the wind seemed to hush. Clara froze, her lips parting, disbelief written in every line of her face. Her chest heaved with the struggle to breathe. She had been called many names in this town: cow, barren, curse. But never, not once, had anyone called her mother. Reverend Cole's lips pressed tighter, his jaw ticking with anger. Some townsfolk muttered, uneasy. But most simply stared, wide-eyed, caught between ridicule and something softer, something they hadn't felt in years. Elias Carter stepped forward then. Slow, steady, His boots sank into the dust, his shadow falling across the twins, across Clara, across the whole spectacle. He didn't shout. He didn't draw his rifle. He simply reached down, drew the knife from his belt, and with one swift motion cut the ropes from Clara's wrists. The cords fell away, leaving angry red welts across her skin. Clara looked up at him, dazed. She searched his face, but his expression gave nothing. He was a man who had seen war, who had buried a wife, who had chosen silence as his only shield. Yet here he stood, breaking the spectacle with one action that spoke louder than any sermon. The twins pressed close to Clara, one holding her arm, the other her torn dress. Their innocence burned like flint against the cruelty. Clara Whitmore, who just moments ago had been dragged as a symbol of disgrace, now stood with two small girls at her side and a cowboy at her back. For the first time in years, she was no longer on the ground. But questions still hung heavy in the air. Why had Elias acted? Would the town allow this defiance? And most of all, was this the beginning of Clara's redemption, or only a deeper kind of scandal? Elias Carter did not speak a word as the wagon rattled out of Ironwood. The twins, Anna and Elsie, clung to Clara, Whitmore's hands as though afraid she might vanish like dust on the wind. Behind them, the town's voices still echoed, laughter, whispers, judgment that clung heavier than rope burns. Yet ahead stretched the prairie road, and with every turn of the wheel, the clamor grew distant, until there was nothing but the sound of horse hooves and the whisper of the wind. The Carter homestead came into sight as the sun sagged low. Weathered wood, paint long stripped by storms. A porch that creaked with age. It was not a grand place, not a house fit for gentry or proud beginning. The twins were first to leap down from the wagon. Their tiny boots pattered up the porch, laughter chasing one another like fireflies. Clara stepped slower. The blue of her dress was dulled with dust. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke and leather oil. The rooms were tidy. Elias had kept them clean in the way a soldier keeps his kit. Plates stacked, floor swept, blankets folded with sharp corners. But the place felt hollow, as though warmth had been rationed out and used up long ago. The girls' toys were few. A wooden doll with one eye, a faded picture book, scraps of cloth tied for play. Clara noticed, but she said nothing. Elias cleared his throat. Rooms down the hall. Not much, but it's yours. The door creaked open to reveal a narrow space, a small bed, a washstand, a quilt pieced by rough hands, not delicate ones. She stood there for a long moment, brushing her fingers across the wood frame. By evening, Clara moved into the kitchen. She did not ask permission. She rolled her sleeves, tied her torn dress at the waist, and began to work. Elias watched from the doorway, silent as a shadow. A pot clanged, water hissed over fire, the smell of beef bones and root vegetables began to rise. Carrots, potatoes, a hint of onion, rough staples, cut with steady hands. She kneaded biscuits, dusting flour across her arms, humming low beneath her breath. When the molasses touched the bread dough, the twins leaned on the table wide-eyed, noses twitching with delight. Hot milk, just a drop of cinnamon, Clara whispered, sliding mugs before them. Anna giggled as the steam tickled her face. Elsie leaned close, cautious, as though afraid such sweetness might disappear if she blinked. At the table, they bowed heads. Elias muttered grace, words heavy, almost unwilling. But Clara added nothing. She only passed plates, filling bowls deep. For the first time in many nights, the Carter home smelled not just of wood and smoke, but of comfort. Later, Clara found the twins yawning, hair tangled from play. She sat on the edge of their bed, comb in hand, and began to braid. She did it gently, fingers patient. "Two little rivers," she murmured, weaving strands together. Anna and Elsie giggled, pulling at each other's plaits. When the candles burned low, Clara hummed again. Not a hymn the Reverend would preach, not a song of grand halls. Just a soft lull, the kind her mother once sang when storms beat against the roof. And before long, the twins sank into sleep, their breaths even, small hands curled around hers. Ilias lingered in the doorway, watching. He did not step inside, but his eyes traced the shape of the scene. Two girls at peace, a woman steady beside them. His jaw tightened, as though he carried questions even silence could not contain. Clara, sensing him, lifted her gaze. "I'll earn my place here," she said softly, "not to beg, but to stake a claim. I'll work for it." The next dawn proved her word. She rose before light, hauled water from the well, shoulders straining under the yoke. She stacked wood, swept floors, mended a fraying saddle strap with careful stitches. No task too small, no chore too rough. Her body bore the labor without complaint, because she had learned the hard truth. In a world that mocked her body, sweat was the only proof of worth. The twins followed at her heels. When she hung laundry, they handed clothespins. When she split corn, they giggled at kernels bouncing off the table. And at night, she told them stories, not fairy tales of castles, but gentle ones of fields, rivers, and stars. One evening, little Elsie whispered as Clara tucked them in, "Do you know where Mummy went?" The question hung heavy. Elias, standing at the door, stiffened. He had never spoken of it, never given them words for the ache. Clara stroked Elsie's hair, choosing her answer like one chooses threads for a delicate seam. "She went where love never ends," she murmured, "and she left you her laughter. I hear it every time you smile." The child pressed close, sighing, and for the first time in many seasons, the ache eased. But peace was a fragile thing. Word spread fast through Ironwood. At the mercantile, at the blacksmith's forge, on the church steps, tongues wagged. Elias Carter's brought the Whitmore woman under his roof. Some said it with mockery, others with pity. Some claimed it proved he was weak, unable to stand firm against shame. One afternoon, a townsman at the well leaned in close to another. "Heard she's cooking for him now. Heard she's playing mother to those girls." The other spat. "She'll bring curse on that house. Mark me." Elias heard. He stood near enough, bucket in hand. But he said nothing. He walked past, shoulder square, silence heavy as iron. The gossip clung, but he bore it without reply. At the ranch, though, silence carried another weight. Clara noticed it in the way Elias lingered at the table, eating slow, eyes fixed on the girls' laughter but saying little. She noticed it in the way he paused outside her room, then walked away without knocking. He was a man who had once known command, yet now kept his words locked behind walls. And she, though raw and unhealed, began to understand. His silence was not absence. It was war ghosts. It was a man who had lost and feared to lose again. The days at the Carter Ranch began to stretch into something new. Not sudden, not loud, but quiet. The kind of change that slips into a house like morning light through shutters. Clara Whitmore, who once stood bound in shame, now stood at the heart of the home, sleeves rolled, voice soft, hands busy. Anna and Elsie were her shadows. The twins followed her from room to room, chattering, tugging at her skirts, eager to help in every small way. Clara never brushed them aside. She gave them little tasks, patient and precise. In the kitchen, she set 2 small stools before the table. "Here," she said, placing flour in a bowl. "Put your hands in. Don't be afraid of the mess." The girls squealed as their fingers sank into the powder, clouds rising like tiny storms. Clara laughed, not timid, not ashamed, but a full sound that startled even herself. She pressed their small hands over the dough, guiding the rhythm. "Push with the heel of your palm. That's it. Bread listens to strong hands." When the biscuits went in the oven, Anna tugged a sleeve already dusted white. "Can we make a doll?" Clara looked around the bare shelves, the scraps of cloth folded in the corner. She fetched scissors, a needle, and a bit of stuffing. She cut a soft square, sewed seams slow and neat. Elsie clapped when the shape began to appear. "Her name is Lila," she declared, hugging the cloth figure tight. Anna quickly demanded one too. Soon, Clara had 3 dolls stitched by hand, simple, humble things, but treasures in the twins' eyes. Elias Carter stood at the doorway during these moments. At first, his stance was stiff, as if he did not belong in the picture unfolding before him. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, jaw tight. But something in his eyes shifted when he watched Clara kneel, laughter spilling as flowers streaked her hair. His hand twitched once, uncertain, before he walked in, picked up a fallen quilt, and draped it over Clara's shoulders without a word. She startled, meeting his gaze. For a heartbeat, silence hung between them. Then he nodded once, gruff, and stepped back. It wasn't much, but it was something. One morning, Elias found her in the yard, hammering nails into a sagging gate. Sweat traced her brow, her blue dress streaked with dust. "I can mend it," she said, not looking up, her blows steady. "You'll blister your hands," Elias warned. "They've blistered before," she answered, driving another nail. Another day, a calf stumbled in the pen, weak and bawling. Clara fetched a rope and pulley, her arms straining as she helped Elias lift it. She rubbed its neck, whispering low until the creature stilled. The girls watched wide-eyed, clapping when the calf found its legs again. Each act chipped at the words. Ironwood had spat at her. Weak, cursed, unwomanly. Here she was, steady, fierce, gentle in ways the town would never see. And the girls adored her for it. At night, Clara's true labor began. Scraped knees from wild play, patched with a salve she mixed from herbs gathered by the creek. Whimpers in the dark, soothed by a hand stroking hair. Stories whispered under quilts, spun not from books but from memory. Tales of stars guiding lost travelers, of rabbits who built homes in hollow trees, of mothers who sang through storms. The house, once quiet as stone, now held warmth. Anna's giggles, Elsie's shy questions, Clara's humming. Even Elias, who moved like a man carrying too much silence, found himself pausing longer in the evenings, listening. Then came the first test. It started small. A cough among the livestock, a mule refusing feed. By week's end, 3 animals showed fever, eyes dull, coats rough. Fear stirred in Elias. Sickness could sweep through a herd like fire. He set about boiling tar, preparing rough remedies. Clara stood beside him, watching, then shook her head. "That won't hold it." She left without waiting, returning with a bundle of herbs, pungent, bitter-smelling leaves. "My mother taught me," she explained, crushing them with mortar and stone. A poultice to draw out the heat. Skepticism flickered in Elias' eyes. But desperation won. He let her smear the paste along swollen joints, her hands moving with care. By dawn, the fever broke in one animal. By the next night, the others stirred, hungry again. The twins cheered, racing through the barn. Elias looked at Clara across the stall, his face unreadable. Then, slowly, he tipped his hat. Gratitude, awkward, unspoken, but real. For the first time, the ranch felt stronger with Clara than without her. But Ironwood was not blind. 2 townswomen lingered at the fence one market day, baskets in hand. Their eyes narrowed as Clara walked with the twins, braids neat, cheeks bright. "Look at her," one muttered. "Playing house as though she belongs. She bewitched those girls," the other whispered. "And Elias, too. You'll see." Their words spread like smoke. On Sunday, Reverend Cole preached of order, of keeping homes pure, of guarding children from corrupting influence. He did not name Clara. He did not need to. Whispers bloomed across pews, then spilled into the street. By the week's end, rumors hardened. A petition, they said, to protect the Carter children. To remove the Whitmore woman before harm fell on them all. Clara knew nothing of signatures and whispered meetings. She only knew the rhythm of days, laughter in the kitchen, flour on the floor, bedtime braids, and soft songs in the dark. But beyond the ranch, Ironwood was stirring. And what she was building, Brick by brick, story by story, love by love, would soon be tested by the cruelty of a town that refused to forget. The summer sky had carried warnings all day. The air hung heavy, thick as syrup, the horizon bruised with darkening clouds. By dusk, Ironwood knew a storm was coming, but none guessed its teeth would bear so quick, so sharp. At the Carter Ranch, Clara Whitmore set a pan of biscuits on the table when the first clap of thunder split the air. Anna and Elsie squealed, clutching at her skirts. Elias stepped to the door, eyes narrowing at the churn of clouds. "Stay inside," he said. But even as the words left his mouth, the wind roared through the valley, tearing leaves and rattling loose shingles. Lightning flared, too close. The smell of ozone burned in their throats. The storm came like a wall. Rain hammered down, wind shrieked through cracks, and in the distance came the unmistakable crash of timber. The barn! Elias cursed, reaching for his coat. But Clara was already moving, skirts bunched in her fists. "The stock'll run," she shouted above the roar. "If they break toward the ridge, you'll lose them all." She didn't wait for permission. She tied her blue dress up above her knees, snatched a coil of rope from the wall, and plunged into the storm. Mud swallowed her boots as she ran, hair whipping her face. Shutters banged loose against the house, and she caught them mid-stride, tying them down with quick knots, fingers raw from the rope. Another crack of thunder shook the ground. From the barn came the frantic cries of horses, doors slamming in the wind. Clara forced the latch open and slipped inside. Chaos reigned, animals thrashing, hooves striking sparks on wood, hay scattered like tinder. She moved without hesitation, voice low but firm. "Easy now, easy." Amari reared, eyes rolling white. Clara threw the rope, caught the halter, braced her feet in the muck, and held. Her palms burned as the rope ripped across them, but she dug in, speaking steady, her body straining until the animal stilled beneath her hand. Lightning split the sky, casting her in silhouette, broad shoulders heaving, skirts torn, mud streaked up her arms. She looped the rope quick, tied a belaying knot she'd learned long ago, and secured the mare. Elias appeared at her side, soaked, breath ragged. "You'll kill yourself out here." She shot him a look, rain streaming down her cheeks. "Then stand with me." And he did. Together they forced the panicked herd back from the fence line. When one steer broke through a gap, Clara grabbed a length of timber and jammed it across, muscles screaming as she wedged it into place. Elias shouldered in to help, but it was Clara's quick thinking, her relentless grit, that kept the animals from bolting into the dark. At one point, a young filly burst free, racing toward the ridge. Clara didn't hesitate. She sprinted after it, rope swinging, mud sucking at her legs. Elias shouted, fear sharp in his throat, but she didn't slow. With a wild throw, the rope looped over the filly's neck. The animal jerked, nearly pulling her off her feet, but Clara held fast, heels digging into the earth. Step by step, she reeled it in, whispering low, until the trembling creature stood against her chest. The cut on her palm bled freely now, mixing with the rain, but she barely noticed. She pressed her forehead to the filly's wet mane, murmuring calm before leading it back to shelter. All through the night they worked, hauling, tying, shouting over the wind. Clara climbed ladders to secure loose shingles, dragged fallen boards from doorways, even lifted a beam with Elias when it threatened to crush the stable wall. Her body bore the storm's fury, torn skirt, scraped arms, rope burns deep into her skin. But her eyes never wavered. And Elias, hardened soldier of silence, watched her with something close to awe. He had seen strength in battle, yes, but not like this, not the kind that fought not to destroy, but to preserve, to shield, to keep life from slipping away. By the time dawn cracked pale and thin across the valley, the storm had passed. The ranch lay battered but standing. A roof bent, fences broken, mud churned deep, but the herd was alive. The barn still stood. The Carter family had endured. Anna and Elsie burst from the house, barefoot in the wet grass. They ran straight to Clara, clinging to her mud-smeared skirts, eyes wide with worship. "You saved them," Anna cried. "Like a hero," Elsie whispered. And then, so soft it almost vanished in the morning wind, the words slipped free. "Mommy." Clara froze. Her breath caught. She looked down at their faces, hair tangled, cheeks streaked with tears and soot, and felt the weight of the word land in her chest. A word she had never been allowed. A word the town had denied her. Elias heard it too. He stood close, hands on his belt, eyes locked on Clara. There was no mockery in his look now. No pity. Only something new, respect, recognition. As if he finally saw what his daughters had seen from the start. By mid-morning, townsfolk began to arrive. Word of the storm's path had spread, and neighbors came to lend help or to gawk. They found Clara knee-deep in mud, hands blistered, her body a map of bruises, but her stance unbowed. Some stopped in their tracks, struck silent. Men who once spat insults now muttered admiration. Women who whispered curses found themselves whispering different things. Astonishment, even respect. "Never seen work like that," one stable hand admitted, tipping his hat. But not all hearts turned. A few gossips stood at the edge of the yard, lips tight. "Luck," one hissed. "The cowboy saved it all." "She just happened to be there." Another nodded. "Storms bring chaos." "Don't mean she's fit for his girls." So the town split again, witnesses swayed, enemies unmoved. But the children had spoken, the animals were alive, and the ranch stood strong. That night, when the twins lay curled against Clara, their breath soft in sleep, Elias stood at the doorway once more. He watched her brush hair from their faces, her hands bandaged, her body weary but her spirit burning. For the first time, he allowed himself the thought, maybe this woman wasn't a burden dragged from the dust. Maybe she was the storm itself, fierce, unstoppable, and in the end, life-giving. And the summons went out on a Sunday morning, crisp and merciless. The bell of Snowpine Church rang longer than usual, not a call to worship, but a call to judgment. Reverend Cole's voice had swelled across the town all week, urging order and purity, whispering that the Carter children were being led astray by a woman of shameful past. By dusk, every bench of the meeting hall was filled, lanterns flickering against the high beams, the air thick with the musk of sweat and expectation. Clara sat near the back at first, hands folded tight in her lap, jaw steady though her heart pounded. She had faced storms, both in the sky and in men's eyes, but this was the trial that threatened to strip her of the little family she had begun to call her own. Beside her, Anna and Elsie clutched her skirts, whispering questions she could not answer. Elias Carter stood silent near the front, hat brim low, shoulders squared as if preparing for a gunfight. But tonight there would be no bullets, only words sharper than steel. Reverend Cole took the floor, his black coat swaying, his voice pitched to every corner of the hall. "Brothers and sisters, we gather not in cruelty, but in duty. There is among us one whose history carries shadow, whose presence among innocent children cannot be overlooked. These little ones must be guarded. Elias Carter, you have long been our neighbor, and your late wife was beloved. Yet now your home shelters one who brings whispers of scandal. For their sake, for the future of this town, I call upon you to remove Clara Whitmore." The murmurs began, swelling like a restless tide. A few nods, a few folded arms. Some eyes glimmered with pity, others with hunger for spectacle. Clara did not rise. She would not plead, not yet. It was the twins who broke the silence. Anna's small voice lifted first, shaky but clear. "She's our mommy." Gasps rippled through the hall. Elsie, bolder, squeezed her sister's hand and added, "She sings our songs at night. She makes us dolls. She keeps us safe." The room shifted. What had been a court of judgment now trembled with the unguarded truth of children. Elias straightened, the words of his daughters striking him like a bell in his own chest. He removed his hat and stepped forward. His voice was low, steady as a hammer hitting iron. You've all seen storms tear through this valley. Last week, when the wind near split the barns and drove the cattle toward the ravine, it wasn't Reverend Cole who tied the gates. It wasn't any of you who threw a rope round that mare. It was Clara, with her hands cut and her clothes soaked through. She saved more than half this ranch. She has mended fences with me. She's lifted a calf when no man could. She's patched my girl's knees, tucked them in when nightmares came, and she hums the songs my wife once did. If you call that corruption, then you know nothing of family. The hall fell into a thick, startled silence. Lantern light caught the lines of Elias' face, not hard, not softened, but resolute. From the far side, a woman rose, Mrs. Wilkins, who once had spat at Clara's passing shadow. Her voice cracked but carried. I was wrong. I mocked her, because the Reverend said to. But I saw her in the storm. I saw her drag timber heavier than any man dared touch. That wasn't weakness. That was courage. And we were cowards. The murmur shifted again, turning from suspicion to shame. A shopkeeper cleared his throat, awkward, as though swallowing stones. Her tools came through my store. I overcharged her once. I'll set that right. Another neighbor spoke. If she's to mend the fences, I'll bring nails. Seems the least I can do. It was not unanimous, never could be. One man barked that Elias was blinded by loneliness, that a woman like Clara could never scrub clean her name. Reverend Cole's face hardened, lips pressed thin. Yet the tide had shifted. Where once the crowd leaned toward banishment, now it leaned toward acceptance, or at least silence. Clara rose at last. Her voice was calm, every syllable like stone laid upon stone. I did not come here to steal a family. I came because I was given a second chance to breathe. You call me barren, you call me unfit. Yet I have baked bread in your homes. I have stitched your sleeves. I have hauled your timber. These children call me mother not because I asked them to, but because I love them when no one else dared. You may choose to hate me still, but I will not bow to your cruelty again. I am Clara Whitmore, and I am not ashamed. The hall seemed to exhale. Reverend Cole's jaw worked, but even he could not command the wind when it blew another way. Elias stepped beside her, his presence a wall at her back. He did not raise his voice further. He did not need to. The meeting, broken from its purpose, dissolved by degrees into quiet nods, shuffling feet, and lanterns dimmed. Later, when the hall had emptied, the twins tugged Clara's hands all the way back to the ranch. Elias walked behind, his silence heavy but not cold. At the hearth, with the girls half asleep against her lap, Clara stroked their hair while Elias stood watching. The firelight painted his face in shades of decision. At last he spoke, quiet as the ticking clock on the mantel. Clara, will you stay? Will you marry me? She lifted her eyes, searching him, weighing not pity but partnership. Her dignity remained unbroken. Her answer came sure and steady. Yes, Elias, on my own terms, yes. The girls stirred, their cheers muffled by drowsy smiles. Anna curled closer, whispering Mommy as though it had always been her birthright. Outside, the town still wrestled with its doubts, its gossip, its old cruelties. But within the Carter homestead, a new truth had been set in stone. In the quiet that followed, Clara fingered the worn locket at her neck, Jonah Whitmore's face etched within. She had not forgotten the pain, nor the betrayal that once cast her into the street. The mystery of that past lingered still, like an unopened letter on a windowsill. But now, at last, she was no longer defined by it. The final image was of sunlight breaking through the window the next morning. Clara sat braiding Anna's hair, Elsie humming nearby. Elias leaned against the doorway, watching his home remade. For the first time, Clara did not wonder if she belonged. She knew. And so did everyone who had the courage to look closely. Thank you for coming this far. If you enjoyed walking through this story with me, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell here at Ironwood Narratives. We bring you more tales of love, grit, and redemption every week. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep listening.